Sometimes the most revealing thing a person says isn't about themselves at all, it's about who they refuse to let go of. That's the feeling a lot of long-time Live viewers had recently, when Kathie Lee Gifford made a quiet but pointed admission. In all the years since she left the anchor desk, she has never once sat down and watched an episode of the show hosted by her successor, Ripa. Not one. Not a segment, not a clip, not a single morning. And in the same breath, she lit up talking about Regis Philbin, the man she called her partner for 15 years, with a warmth that made it obvious exactly where her loyalty still lives. On the surface, that might sound like a small, almost throwaway detail. A woman who moved on to other projects simply never got around to tuning in. But the timing, the tone, and the history behind it make this so much more interesting than a scheduling coincidence. And if you're someone who has followed Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos, their marriage, their careers, the way they've built an entire television legacy together, this moment says something bigger about legacy, loyalty, and what it actually means to inherit somebody else's chair. Let's start with the plain facts because they matter before we get into what they reveal emotionally. Kathie Lee co-hosted the show for 15 years alongside Regis, beginning in the late 1980s. When she left in 2000, the seat didn't stay empty for long. Kelly Ripa stepped in the following year, and what started as Live with Regis and Kelly would eventually become the multi-decade institution we know today, later evolving into Live with Kelly&Mark, once Mark Consuelos joined his wife behind the desk. Kathie has explained her absence from the show partly by pointing to how busy she was during those years, saying she was making movies and writing musicals. That explanation is reasonable enough on paper. Careers evolve. People move toward new creative chapters and don't look back. But something about the way this detail landed with audiences suggests it isn't really about a busy schedule at all. It's about attachment, the kind that doesn't fade just because a job title changes. Because here's the thing about Kathie Lee and Regis, theirs wasn't just a professional partnership. She has described those years together as the golden years of her life, the kind of on-air chemistry where teasing, warmth, and total comfort with each other were just part of the daily rhythm. When she talks about him, there's a softness in her voice that doesn't sound performative. It sounds like grief that never fully resolved, mixed with genuine joy at having had that closeness in the first place. So when she says she's never watched Kelly on that same stage, what she may actually be saying is something much simpler and much more human. Some chairs feel too personal to watch someone else sit in. That's a feeling a lot of viewers understand instinctively, even if it's never been put into words for them before. Think about it in terms of your own life. Maybe it's a job you loved and left, a friendship that shifted, a role you poured yourself into and then had to hand over. There's a particular kind of ache in watching someone else step into something that once belonged to you, even when you're happy for them, even when you've genuinely moved forward. Kathie Lee's silence toward Kelly's era on Live doesn't necessarily read as bitterness. It reads as a woman protecting a memory that still feels sacred to her. And this is where the story becomes less about two morning show hosts and more about something audiences relate to on a deeply personal level, the way we hold on to certain chapters of our lives so tightly that we can't bear to see them continue without us in the frame. Now, layer Kelly Ripa's own perspective on top of this, and the emotional picture gets even richer. Kelly has never pretended that stepping into that role, following two legends in Kathie Lee and later Regis, was simple or seamless. In her memoir Livewire, she has written candidly about the difficulty of working alongside Philbin, describing restrictions on her hair and makeup team and a lack of a wardrobe budget in those early years. She has also shared that her name had to appear smaller than his on the show's branding. A small detail, but one that speaks volumes about what it feels like to walk into an established partnership as the newer, less powerful voice in the room. That's an important thread to pull on because it reframes the entire narrative. Kelly wasn't simply handed a beloved chair and told to enjoy it. She had to earn her place in real time, on camera, in front of millions of people who were still mourning the version of the show that existed before her. And she did it while being publicly, if gently, measured against two people, Kathie Lee and Regis, whose chemistry had already been cemented in viewers' hearts for over a decade. When you understand that context, Kathie Lee's admission takes on a different shade. It's not necessarily a slight against Kelly's talent or her 2 decades of hosting excellence. It might simply be the honest limitation of someone who can't separate the show from the specific partnership that made it feel like home to her. Regis wasn't just a co-host to Kathie Lee. He was, in her own words, essentially family, someone she never had a crossword with in 15 years, someone whose laugh she can still describe from memory. There's something quietly moving about that kind of loyalty, even when it comes at the expense of acknowledging what came next. And it says something about why audiences have stayed so emotionally attached to television partnerships in general, because when the chemistry is real, viewers don't just watch a show, they watch a relationship. They watch two people build trust in real time, morning after morning, year after year. That's exactly what Kelly and Mark have spent years doing with a new generation of viewers, and it's worth asking. Is Kathie Lee's continued devotion to her Regis years actually a preview of how deeply audiences will one day feel about Kelly and Mark's own partnership, long after their run eventually ends? Because that is, in many ways, the heart of what makes Kelly and Mark's dynamic on Live so compelling to watch. It isn't polished in the way a scripted show is polished. It's two people who have been married for decades, who know each other's rhythms so well that their banter feels unrehearsed, who tease each other the way real couples do, with affection wrapped inside the sarcasm. Viewers don't tune in only for headlines or celebrity guests. They tune in to watch a marriage exist in public, unfiltered, morning after morning. That kind of intimacy is rare on television, and it's exactly the kind of thing that made Kathie Lee and Regis's partnership so beloved in its own era too. Which brings us back to that quiet, almost aching gesture Kathie Lee made when she talked about Regis inviting friends over to see her Connecticut home, even joking that they didn't actually want to see her. They wanted to see the house. It's a small, funny memory, but the way she tells it, you can hear how much she misses simply having him call. Not the show. Not the fame. Just him, checking in, being playful, being present. That's the kind of loss that doesn't show up in a career retrospective. It shows up in silence, in a phone that doesn't ring the way it used to, in a chair on a soundstage that someone else now occupies. It's worth pausing here and asking why this particular story resonated with so many people the way it did. Part of it is nostalgia. Kathie Lee and Regis represent an era of daytime television that many viewers grew up with, a slower, warmer version of morning TV before it became so heavily produced and algorithm-driven. But part of it is something more universal. We've all had a Regis in our lives. Someone who made an ordinary chapter feel golden simply by being there. And we've all, at some point, had to watch someone else step into a space that once felt entirely ours. For Kelly and Mark's audience specifically, this story adds an unexpected layer of depth to how we understand their own on-screen relationship. It's a reminder that every era of that show has carried real emotional weight for the people living it, not just entertainment value for the people watching it. Kelly didn't inherit an easy legacy. She built her own chapter, brick by brick, alongside genuine personal history that included professional friction, public scrutiny, and eventually the kind of hard-won ease we now see when she and Mark are on air together. And maybe that's the quiet lesson hidden inside Kathie Lee's admission. Loyalty to the past doesn't have to be an insult to the present. It's simply proof of how deeply television relationships, when they're genuine, can root themselves in someone's heart. Kathie Lee never watched Kelly's run because for her, that seat will always belong to a specific era, a specific partnership, a specific kind of laughter she's never quite found again. That's not pettiness. That's love with nowhere left to go. Perhaps the reason so many people remain invested in stories like this one isn't simply because they involve familiar faces from morning television. It's because underneath the headlines they're really stories about attachment, about the chapters we can't quite let go of, and about how the people who shape our lives, even for just an hour a morning, 5 days a week, leave marks that don't disappear just because the show moves on. So here's a question worth sitting with. Is there a version of your own life you've never been able to watch continue without you in it? A team, a friendship, a role, a routine that someone else now carries forward? If Kathie Lee's honesty stirred something in you, that's probably why. And if you've followed Kelly and Mark's journey together, through the awkward early years, through the challenges of stepping into someone else's shadow, all the way to the easy, affectionate chemistry they share now, we'd love to hear what part of their story resonates with you most. Drop your thoughts, your favorite moment, or your own memory of the Live era that shaped you. Because stories like this one only get richer when we talk about them together.